Right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Now, I'll be right up front and say that the Minoan beliefs are very much centered on female deities. Of course, how can we know? Well, we have unearthed so many of these female images and not that many male images. And of course, we see this also in the artwork and frescoes and so forth, that it kind of gets pretty obvious after a while. Also, of course, we have to think to ourselves when we take a look at the male images, which we're going to be seeing. Everything that I'm talking about, we will be seeing directly here. We find that oftentimes the male images are a little bit smaller, besides the much larger in size female images. Some assume that these male forms represent a vegetative god. We'll go into that. They could represent also a male worshiper. It may be no coincidence that society and their views of women reflected back into their religious beliefs, that their heightened reverence for goddesses also heightened the importance of women in many different ways in their society, giving them at least a greater latitude of influence alongside of men. It's not, I mean, this is the ancient world. It's not gender equality, but it still is certainly rare for society during that period of time. Presently, also, maybe in some cases. So there you have it. We take a look at women in the various frescoes. They're depicted very much empowered. You can see this in fashion. We see representations of women doing some of the same jobs that men did in the ancient world. We see some of the same kinds of tasks. We see women even as merchants as well. So there is something going on. Now, like the majority of the ancient world at this time, the Minoans were polytheistic. I'll say that. And we can recognize a number of their deities. You saw that I hesitated when I said polytheistic. They are polytheistic, but it's so interesting. I've been doing a few extra little studies along the way. And, um, you know, when it comes to ancient religion, you do have this interesting degree of animism. And animism, aspects of that, understandings of that, were still kind of woven within Minoan civilization to a little bit of a degree. So we'll go there too. But we'll strictly said it's polytheistic, right? So we can recognize many of the deities, the gods. Of course, that leads up to another interesting point. And we do understand that there's a pantheon of some sort. Some scholars suppose that they all represent maybe many faces when it comes to the goddesses, the many faces of an all powerful goddess pervading a universal order. Yet these conceptions of the many representing the one, while certainly possible, are a little bit early on the world stage when it comes to theological conceptions. There's not a lot of theologians, not a lot of, so religion at that time was very pragmatic. It's very much bartering with these deities to get what they want. And that's what they and so some of the nuances are not exactly focused upon, not really articulated. We take a look at what the Minoans depict in their imagery, and there's a lot going on, but it doesn't seem to be woven within a concept that necessarily is a dogma. And when it comes to these goddesses being representations or many faces of one deity, that becomes problematic. but we're going to go into that issue too. Don't worry. This is going to be a Pandora's box. We're going to open up a lot of places, and there will be so much richness, at least I hope, that comes out along with hope. You know that story. Okay. All right. Um, uh, Now, we do have representations of goddesses side by side, like we see at Gazi, for example, with one of them having poppies in her hair, while the other one has cult horns and birds on her. So, yeah, still, I would agree that there appears to be some kind of great goddess that may be above the others, and that is part of the Minoan worldview. And where do I get that information? Well, there's an echo. There's an echo of this great Cretan goddess that is found along the shores of Asia Minor and early on, from the Ionian coast to the Carian coast to the Lycian and Pamphylian coastlines. We come across this mother goddess, this creatrix. And when we take a look at the literary and artistic legacies and we read back, a lot of fingers point back to Crete, and there's an intermixing going on with the Minoans and a group known as the Luvians. And so this mixing bowl, so to speak, uh, reveals that through these echoes, there's an understanding of those on the coastline, that there is some sort of goddess that encompasses many of these others and seems to be above them all. What is fascinating, here we go, is that this goddess seems to be connected to three different levels. There seems to be a heavenly form, there seems to be an earthly form, and there seems to be a chthonic or underworld form. And so there is this tripartite division. With that said, we also see that within a male deity, even though it's far weaker, that seems to be arriving from Crete and the areas that were connected to the Minoans and onto the shores of Anatolia. So, again, much to explore here, and don't worry, you will not be disappointed. So, there we have it. Now, let's go to the first image. This is my introduction picture, just to get us into the topic, right? Yeah, let's go to the next image. Look, there it is. What does potness mean? Potness means the lady. That it is in the archive tablets, and this potness, or this the lady, had shrines or sanctuaries located in many places. She was worshipped in the later part of the Minoan period, at least, and also on the mainland as well. So perhaps cult practices and deities were amongst the Minoan exports, right? At Kenosis, there are dedications of offerings to the Lady of the Labyrinth. Potnia does repeatedly uh, re show up as the goddess's name. So you can see right here, take a look here. You have bringing to the temple of Potnia 100 rams and 190 pigs. There it all is in linear B. And also, of course, this is Mycenaean, but this legacy goes from the Minoans to the Mycenaeans. You see here also bringing by ship to Potnia 100 rams and 190 pigs. So uh, you have people who are bringing these rams by land and by sea. And there's the breakdown of what it means. And so Uh, Potnia occurs repeatedly as the main goddess's name. So she is the lady, simply. In the classical period, the title was used as a respectful, honorific title in addressing women of rank, but it originated as the proper name of what appears to be a principal Minoan goddess. Now, in her aspect as a domestic goddess, she was a guardian of households, possibly in cities. Once again, uh, with the word potnia tied to these particular activities. So we have the lady, and the lady is involved not only in areas connected to fertility and so forth, but also areas connected to households, connected to protection, and of course, you got to give them special gifts. So there you have that, and so that's important to remember. So there is evidence of something that holds them together, and yet there is a diversity of still different goddesses. So it is not an easy journey. Let's get to the next image. We have, of course, this is in fragments right here, but in we do see this Potnia, this lady, connected to what will eventually become Athena, what will eventually become Rhea, what will eventually become Hera. But for today, obviously, we also have this connection, a very strong connection to yet another goddess, Eleutheia. Eleutheia. You are now hearing an actual Minoan word for a goddess that will then go into the MInoan, and then, of course, to regular usage within the Greek context, Eleutheia. So she's included. So yeah. So in many ways, you do have this possibly the central, the lady kind of goddess, and then uh, aspects of her break down. So what I'm trying to say, and I think you're getting it pretty quickly, is that sometimes it works the opposite way. Sometimes you have these more of a singular concept that's breaking into a multiplicity, as opposed to the multiplicity becoming a singular. But at the same time, you also have all these other goddesses besides the lady, and we're going to deal with those too. So not easy, but we'll get through it. And by the end of this talk, you'll probably know way too much. Okay, so taking a look at this one here. This tablet's not exactly complete, um, but it talks about this is for kenosis, and it talks about Potnia in conjunction, excuse me, with an epithet Atana. Atana. This, of course, Atana. You take a look at this. It talks about various offerings to the gods Poseidon and Pauowan, which is a forerunner of Apollo. But you also have this dedication to Atana Potania. Well, and it's on the same tablet. The meaning of the epithet Atana is not known, but it suggests that the Minoan goddess was already being addressed, and among other things, by Atana, which we can derive the word Athena from that. Now, Athena, hmm, so is this the name of the lady god? Is this the name of the god? Well, scholars are divided about this. John Chadwick says, well, maybe it's not the actual proper name for this this goddess. What it is, it's a place name, and so it is the Lady of Atana, uh, the Lady of Athens. Ooh, now that could be interesting. Now, There could be another place in the Minoan Mycenaean world that is called Athens, or it could also refer to Athens, Athens, which we do know that there's an early connection there too. So it gets fascinating, but we do know that there is a connection, and you're seeing it here. So there is a connection between these ideas. Okay, moving to the next image, we have here the double X. Was highly likely to be the Potenia's symbol, and possibly also the pillar and the snake. They were symbols too. The snake, the snake obviously lives in crevices near the hearth, and so it really did make a natural symbol for an earth-dwelling mother goddess, right? An earth-dwelling earth mother, right? So the house snake cult survived into modern times, by the way, and the snake was sometimes known as the master of the house or the house mother. So interesting little bits here. We take a look, and so you have the double axe concept. Now we take a look at the double axe. Of course, the word for axe is labrys. Labrys. So labrys, that's the double axe. And many scholars agree that labrys is the root for the word labyrinth, right? There's a connection. And so you're going to have a potenia who's connected to what they will use in linear B to the labyrinth. And so this, of course, started in Crete. Now, it's interesting that we see the double axe on Crete not associated with male deities. We see the double axe associated with male deities, yes, in Anatolia, right? But we do not see it in Crete, nor in the Minoan and Mycenaean world. And let's go to the next image. So we see this double axe actually connected to a goddess figure. Of course, here you see those making offerings, and you see the double axe right here, right there. What does the double axe mean? The double axe is understood as being a symbol for the beginning of creation. Starting off everything. And so you have this concept. Now, the tablet for Kenosis archives, there's a mention of the offering of honey dedicated to Dapurito Yo Potonia, which, of course, is the Potnea, or the Lady of the Labyrinth. Right. So this tells us that the Potnea had a sanctuary dedicated to her in some part of the labyrinth at Kenosis. Since this temple, and only this one, was referred to in antiquity as a labyrinth per se, at least as far as Crete was concerned. We can be fairly certain that there were sanctuaries dedicated to Potnea in other major temples as well, because we do have references to temples to Potnea at a place known as Cotodonia, Phaistos, Malia, and Zakros. So, yeah. Uh, so there is a connection. Let's go to the next image. Look at that. Well, getting so you can see very clearly you have a goddess with a double axe. But also take a look above. And you can see her, you have the double X, which does connect to the creation of the earth. And above, you have a representation of the sun and a representation of the moon. Oh, and if your eye is quick, you can see that she's receiving some puppies right there, which, of course, produce opium. So you do have, and it's interesting because you do have a goddess that seems to be dedicated to poppies, a poppy goddess. But how does that work in? Well, we're going to find out. Okay. Okay, let's just see me for a little bit. So you get the idea. Now, there are many different perspectives concerning this male deity. Many have come up with theories for how this prominent goddess interacts with the more limited male deity, since the goddess herself was not permitted to cease her existence, to die. The annual birth and death within nature seem to be moving through and acted within by a young male year spirit, who would be lesser than, who then took on the role of a son or a consort. We may have seen this. This is again uh, assumptions based upon not only Indo-European understandings that goes into Celtic perspectives, but also ideas related to within the Middle East. And there is evidence that there is a flow going both directions. And so this male representative uh, represents the discontinuity in nature. So while the female deity represents continuity, and she is the creatrix, and she creates all things, and all things move through her and for her, and all the seasons go. Remember, people are not linear thinkers; they are cyclical thinkers. They see things in the round, and so they see things as this great circle of seasons. Well, this goddess is in control of that wheel, the wheel of the year as it turns. But you still have to understand that the wheel of life, of fertility, involves male and female, at least as they see it in humanity and as they understand it when it comes to their animals, right? So you have this concept of male and female moving back and forth. So they know they got to have something that's female, they got to have something that's male. And they look at the female and they say, well, this is a constant. She is giving birth, right? Constantly. So she has to be connected to life, right? And so the deduction is the guy goes, hey, guess what I get connected with? Yeah, you get connected with death, right? You have that which is permanent and that which is temporary. And so you have this. In the end, still you have this evidence that this male deity, Tammuz, or whatever you want to call it, becomes more subordinate to the goddess. But then eventually, this male deity becomes a little bit more empowered. This is through time. This really started in the Mycenaean period and goes into the Dark Ages. And some people will say perhaps this is Zeus. In some cases, it is Zeus. In some cases, it's not Zeus. It's Poseidon. But that's beside the point. So we'll get there in a few moments. So let's go with the Zeus one. So Zeus. So eventually Zeus became more important. Now there is a Minoan Mycenaean name that was used for this Zeus-like figure, this male figure that seems to be gaining in power, and that is Velkanos. Velkanos. So, and this name actually seemed to endure even into the classical period as a title that is attributed to Zeus on Crete. So you will have on Crete a Zeus Velkanos. Uh, and so also, which is pretty fascinating, is they call this Zeus Velkanos. He's also known on Crete as Kouros, which means the boy. Yeah. Okay. So Velkanos was always, again, subject to the goddess, but this is going to change. So let's take a look here at Velkanos with our next image. Oh yeah, sorry, that's the Botany of the Labyrinth there. There we go. Yay. So here is, of course, the goddess, and you see this boy, right? Now there was two ivory divine figurines that were described by Evans, who initially was an archaeologist that worked at Knossos, right? And he believed that they originated from the labyrinth, and these images may represent Velkanos himself before and just after puberty. There's a description of it, and I have one of them here. The older boy is leaner and more muscular, has shorter hair and a small skull cap, which may conceal a tonsure. It is known that youths grew their hair long in preparation of a ritual offering of a lock of hair to the deity. The older boy appears to have gone through this initiation ritual, but still stands erect with arms raised in the gesture of worship and submission. So we also have an older version. So let's go to the next image. And so there's Velkanos, right? So an older vision. And so this, of course, becomes Zeus. All right. Well, okay, so we say, all right, we have it figured out. Good. Well, it's not as easy as it may seem. So let's see me for a few more moments here. Let's go down. You see, here's a problem. And I'm going to go there right now. All right. So the word Zeus, is an Indo-European word. Okay. It's a Proto-Indo-European word. And Zeus was known as Zeus Pitar. The word Zeus means day, as in daylight, as in today, as in yesterday, right? It could also mean sky. So Zeus means sky. Now you're waking up. Huh, okay. Zeus is sky. Sky father, right. Now we move into this other point, is that this word will be arriving amongst the Minoans. The Minoans, however, are not Indo-European. They're not at all. The Mycenaeans, who are Greeks, are Indo-European, but the Minoans aren't. So there is, evidence that they have this boy who is Velkanos, right? In of course in Minoan, and then later on they're going to attach it the when the Indo-Europeans arrive, when the Mycenaeans arrive, they're going to attach it with the Indo-European word Zeus, which is sky. So sky, Velkanos, we're making the connection. And so they'll understand it that way. Here is an interesting situation. And that is, at the same time, there is another concept. And here we go. Is that as we're moving from Minoan into Mycenaean, you have also the Mycenaeans trying their best to understand the Minoan earth goddess. They're trying to understand it, and in some cases, maybe it is Atana, maybe it is Athena, right? It is Potnea Atana, right? Maybe it is the Potnea of the labyrinth, right? Maybe it is Eleutheia, right? Right. So it's a possibility, right? All these things are possible, right? But for them, they're going to attach their own words to this mother. And so what are they going to use to coincide? We're talking about some pretty complicated stuff, but if you get this, you're going to be pretty happy. They're trying to coincide their own words. Well, we've already established the Sky Father, right? Dies Piter. You guys got that? So we have to establish Earth Mother. So how do we do that in Mycenaean? How do we do that in an Indo-European sense? And so we go to another root. And that root for mother, right, is, of course, mater. Mater or mitter, meter, right? So they'll connect that word, mother, with the Minoan understanding. Got it? Then, next step is that ill-connected to the earth. Well, it turns out that in Mycenaean Greek, you have different words for earth. You have, of course, it changes through time, but you have this idea of da, de, ga, da, de, ga. And of course, obviously, eventually, a ga will become Gaia, right? As a, right? Oh, you get it, right? Now, but there's also a period of time where they have a form of the word, and that is Ida. So it's da, Ida, de, and ga, and then get. Fun with consonants and vowels. Yay. All right. So you go, okay, that's great. So how do they understand now this God who is connected to the sky? Remember, there's different levels of this God too. And so they understand, well, how does this earth deity connect with the male one? And they go, oh, well, that would be the spouse, the spouse of the earth, right? The spouse of the earth. So of course you go back and you go, well, what is the spouse word? It's pos. Okay, so spouse of the earth, because now you're at the earth level, no longer the sky level, and you go pos Ida. Poseida. There it is, the spouse of the earth. Poseidon. Oh, now you're just went, okay, wait. Stop. You can have a Zeus and a Poseidon, and they could be aspects of the same kind of concept. Yeah, and as it intermix with the Minoan and Mycenaean, it gets kind of confusing after a while. It gets to the point where there is even a mount dedicated to the earth, and that's Mount Ida. Where is it located? Slam right in the middle of Crete. Hey, and of course, who is supposedly born on Mount Ida? According to all Greek mythology, at least the majority of it, right? Oh yeah, that's right. Zeus is born at the base of Mount Ida. So guarded by these wing fury like daemon like creatures, right? the Idaean dactyls waving and distracting. Are you guys doing okay now? Are you understanding a little bit how these ideas are connected together? So you do have in Minoan, going into Mycenaean religion, you do have these deities, but they come at different levels. And so already you have a sky level and you got an earth level and you got an underworld level, right? Oh, we're having fun. So what happens now? Okay. So, well, again, goddesses appear prominent in Minoan religion. There are exceptions. Poseidon not only appears to be one of them, but he appears also to be quite frequently mentioned, especially towards the end of the Minoan to the Mycenaean era. So this is an evolution. Were Poseidon not that important? Zeus not important before? Why are not important? Because you don't have Indo-Europeans sweeping through yet. And so you still have a very strong Minoan culture. Okay. But as the Mycenaeans sweep in different places, going into mainland Greece, become pirates, are causing problems. You have stories, of course, of the great eruption. Things are disturbed. They're going to have to interact with this new culture. And as they do so, there's assimilation. And as a result of that, you're putting all these terms together. But you still have two very different worldviews. The worldview of the Minoans, yes, it's polytheistic, but it's also there's an animistic aspect to it. By the way, don't tell anybody. That's also true with Roman ancient religion too. But okay, we'll keep going. Is this helpful? Is this good? All right. So let's look at Poseidon just a little bit because we have to understand this as we go through. So Poseidon, while he was understood as the god of the sea by the archaic era of Greece, we know from Minoan and Mycenaean sources that he was actually worshipped as a deity with three aspects. He was worshipped also as connected to the sky, which would, of course, be Zeus. He was connected to the earth, which is inclusive of the sea, and he is connected to the underworld. As a chthonic underworld god, he used the epithet that has survived all the way into the classical period and Hellenistic period, and he's known as the earth shaker because he's underneath. And by the way, and then the land aspect that connects to his horses. Remember, he's connected to the horses. How is he connected to the horses? He's God of the sea. Oh, okay. You're waking up. Did you know the epithet for Poseidon, Earthshaker, is found in Linear B? That's right. NAC Dione. Okay. So you do have these aspects. Oh, and I'll just throw you off. At some of the places, Poseidon is worshipped as a god, and in some cases, Poseidon is worshipped also. Oh, this is going to confuse you, as a goddess. Yes. So, in fact, there's one place where there's a temple dedicated to the male Poseidon, and there's a temple dedicated to the female Poseidon. Oh, if we're not done yet, there's actually another case where there's a temple dedicated to the male Zeus, and there's a temple dedicated to the female Zeus. Whoa! I told you, loosey goosey, right? Anything works. Okay. So you do have this three aspects kind of concept, right? Um, okay. And so these gods are worshipped in three different ways. Of course, these ideas even go into Orphic literature later on when it comes uh, to to even goddesses, right? So you have this idea of course the sky, of course Selene, Artemis, and then Persephone below, right? So you have these concepts that go through it. And so you're going to have, moving right along, we also have uh, uh, this Poseidon connected to a bull, Bull, a bull god. Now, the bull god was also the sun god, and he was also the sun shaker. And so you have this concept that's interesting. Uh, in fact, and so we will keep on going though, but I think it's fascinating. Let's go to the next image, actually. Ah, there we go. So there's a bull right there. So and so by the way, the bull seems to be again connected to Poseidon. In fact, without question, the earliest aspects of Poseidon is related to the bull for both the Minoans and the Mycenaeans, as found within the symbols discovered within their artwork and even in their sacrifices. For right from the beginning, one of the most appropriate sacrifices to Poseidon was a bull. Of course, the fact that Poseidon was connected to the bull within a Minoan context has interesting ramifications in regards to a sacral sport of bull jumping. Let's go to the next image, I think. Uh, yeah, bull jumping. So is, by the way, parallels between the Minoan bull leaping and Spanish bull fighting. Um, so there is something going on there. Uh, the bull dance is central to the Minoan belief system. Uh, the bull was a manifestation of the power of Poseidon, the power, of course, to fertility, as well as dancing. And of course, uh, this connects to the interweaving of human as well as divine destinies. There are elements of collusion and elements of struggle. So you're kind of struggling with Poseidon. But what happens in the end? In the Spanish bullfight, which may indeed have happened in the case of the Minoan one, is the bull is sacrificed, or the bull dies. The bull represents Poseidon. And so this is a remnant, again, of the idea of the male deity who does what? Who dies. That carries on through a ritualistic sense. Isn't that interesting, right? There's, of course, a remnant of the Minoan story that relates to Poseidon. And then, of course, is the story Pasiphae, who mates with the white bull and gives birth to the Minotaur, right? Which is connected to a labyrinth. Oh, wow. We are just going lots of interesting places today, are we not? Okay. But let's go to the next image. So there you have, there's another bull. We have quite a few of these images. Can you imagine running, taking the bull by the horns and running right it and flipping over? There it is. Let's go to the next image. This is actually from this is real artwork. There's the tripartite aspect of Poseidon is also reflected in the tripartite divisions of many of the Minoan temples. So we see this um, in different ways. So different parts. We see this at Knossos. And these areas are surrounded, of course, with bull horns. Not bull horns, but you get the idea. All right. And then, let's see here. Let's go to, I believe, the next image. Okay. The next image, this is the most interesting one. This image, Poseidon arises from a clay seal discovered at Kidona, depicting a god, prominent staff in hand, standing upon a tower that could be a temple at the edge of a cityscape. Waves are either crashing against or proceeding from the lower part of the tower. Some have interpreted this lower part as the city gates, but there's definitely something that resembles a rock formation of some kind. Let's look at the next one. Maybe it's easier to see if it's drawn out literally. There it is. The waves are often thought to connect with Poseidon's capacity as a god of the sea, although they may also represent an actual event like a tsunami or tidal wave, perhaps even a Thera eruption in 1470. In the sky behind him, there's an image of a bull on one side and the image of a fish on the other, connecting to his aspect as both God of the sea and God of the earth. And so the fact that he is depicted in the sky also connects to his sky aspect, which I find is interesting. Without question, there is some kind of connection. So, interestingly enough, so what's going to eventually happen is when it comes to the male deities, the tripartite aspect, you're going to have the sky will be reserved, will just be separated out as Sky Father, which is Zeus, and then uh, Poseidon is gonna who also have all of course connections. Poseidon it will be relegated to the sea. Maybe that's what he gets for allowing the Minoan civilization to experience the cataclysmic eruption of Thera. I don't know. So yeah, but there you have it. So and then now they have a problem. You got the sky taken care of. You got the sea land taken care of. So what do? You bring Hades in to fill in the rest. There you have it. So let's go to the next. So we understand now that also one of the most popular Minoan goddesses appears to be what is now described as the Lady of Beasts or the Huntress, who is very much like a proto Artemis in so many ways, depicted as communing close with nature. She is the mistress of animals, of wild animals. Sometimes we see seals showing this huntress goddess with spear in hand and accompanied by a lion. Let's go to the next image. All right. Sometimes she's holding a sword instead of a spear. So what will happen is that this this Lady of Beasts, is it connected to Potnia? Is it connected to the Great Mother? Is it an aspect of the Great Mother? Or is it completely independent? And that's a good question because if you ask Minoan, they'd probably shrug. Why? Because the great goddess also connects to the wild animal kingdom, right? to nature itself. She births it. So this is an aspect of it. that's represented as a goddess, but may indeed have a direct correlation with Potnia. Again, it's not an easy distinction, and one that would also confuse even a Minoan going through all this, right? And so what will happen is this form, who's the huntress, who's connected to the animal kingdom, is also still will be understood as connected to the human world. How do we know that? Because when this particular aspect goes to the coastline of Asia Minor, when it goes to Ionia, it one form appears as Artemis of the Ephesians. Artemis of the Ephesians, who is she? She is the great mother goddess. She's connected to the realm of nature, but she's also connected to the realm of humanity. You also have, going further east, you have Cybele, who's connected to Artemis of the Ephesians, who also is connected to the wild world. She's also a goddess that's a mother goddess, but at the same time, she's connected to the natural realm. And then you go to the south and you have what? You have Artemis of Pergae, the same thing. In fact, you have a lot of Artemises all the way down, but it's interesting that a lot of them get the name Artemis as you go through Ionia. What happens though when it goes the other direction? When it goes towards mainland Greece, the Greeks, what they do is they parse out of the huntress aspect. They'll parse out anything connected to a mother goddess element, and that's where you get Artemis, the virgin goddess of the moon and hunt, that doesn't have those other attributes. So that's going to be a Greek thing on mainland Greece. But as it comes into the realm of Asia Minor, Anatolia, it's a whole other story. You guys got it? Good. Let's go to the next image. Here's another great image. You notice you have these lions on either side, just as you see the lions either side of Cybele, just as we sometimes see lions or these kind of figurines on all kinds of Artemises throughout Anatolia. Okay, let's go to the next one. But you also have this concept of this goddess who is a great mountain mother goddess, connected to the tops of mountains, of peaks, right? And so we have another interesting situation because we do have the great, right in the middle of Crete, right? The great Earth mountain, right? You have Mount Ida, which literally means Mount Earth, right? And it's connected to the great goddess. I think it's interesting because you're going to get another Ida, another Mount Ida, which is located in Asia Minor in Bithynia, but also next to the Troad, which is overlooking Troy. And that's also known as Mount Ida. The both are connected to one another, and they both have they have those known as the Aegean dactyls, those metallurgist kind of wizard-like daemons, and they're both at the base of Mount Mount Ida in Crete, and they're also at the base of the Mount Ida in Bithynia, Troy. So I do find that very interesting. Okay, so then later on, of course, it moves down to Mount Pion and Ephesus, and also around Mount Salamis and Ephesus, and you also have these same Idaean dactyls there, as well as other places. So fascinating connection. So you have, she's a great goddess of the mountain, the great mountain goddess. And at Ephesus, they do worship Artemis of the Ephesians as the great mountain mother, and we find that also in inscriptions. So once again, Artemis in Asia Minor is also connected to these ideas in so many different ways. We can excavate understandings of Minoans and Mycenaeans and Luvian goddesses via the vehicle of understanding the belief system of Artemis of the Ephesians and trace it all the way back through time. Fun. Okay. Where do we go next? The next image. Next image. Oh, yeah. The Minoans also or venerate what is labeled as the snake goddess. Once again, you know, um, is this an independent goddess or is it connected to Potnia? We don't know. There seems to be some associations, but we cannot say for certain. Of course, here in this image, the snakes are intertwined on her body or on her hands there, because of the fact that this image is primarily found within a domestic setting. Often within small household shrines, we find these snake deities. This goddess seems to be connected to the guardian deities or spirits, the household, um, the hearth, so to speak. In this particular case, you have the two snake goddesses were discovered at Knossos. One of them having a snake on her headdress, while the other has that of a panther. Now, taking a look, what happened is they discovered this just south of the throne room in Knossos. And it was discovered there was like two stone lined pits, and they found a whole bunch of items in here. Most of it was broken, scraps of gold or ivory and stone inlay, unworked horn, right? Ceramic vessels. They even found a vertebrae of a large fish, but they also found three figurines, which this one that you're looking at is one. Um, and so uh, the snake goddess, though, originally lacked a head and half of her left arm. So the complete right arm held a shorter, wavy stripe stick, and so has been interpreted as a snake. But it's still, snakes are very important. And again, it connects to the realm of not only the underworld, but it also connects to the concept of regeneration. In fact, we're going to see this idea going all the way back into ancient Anatolia, going all the way back as way back. We're talking thousands of years back in the idea of regeneration, because snakes do something that most of us don't do unless we get a real bad sunburn. And that is, and that's not good, is that they shed their skin and they become as new. And so in a sense, the old dies, but the new continues, and they are connected to the earth. They're connected to the energy of the earth. They are understood in many cases as living roots, like the living roots of a tree. And so we'll have them depicted in much artwork as being at the base of the tree or hanging from it, right? So you have this idea that so the snake deity concept uh, is, yes, about regeneration, and it is about the magic of life and how it renews itself even over the seasons, but it still continues on. Good. Okay, now let's go to the next image. One of the most common representations of the Minoan goddess shows her sitting on a throne beneath a sacred tree. And so you have this is kind of a cool image. A lot of these are drawn, and you'll see why in a little bit. But they're drawn because they're sometimes are hard to look at the actual piece. They're too bright or they're too smooth, and so these representations do it well. But we're going to go ahead and see some actual ones and do a comparison too. So I will be fair to all the evidence here, but yeah. There is this idea that this goddess very much look. She's sitting on a throne there. She is definitely in power. There's those that are meeting her, probably giving her offerings. Looks like she's in tense thought. There. You do notice above there's something that's floating, right? There's a floating female. Is it a spirit? We'll talk about that. There's been many scholars have studied the various sprites and spirits, these various elementals that appear in these images. Perhaps this is an elemental that's connected to that tree. And then once again, you have this tree of life concept too. So this association. But the Minoans did have indeed, and the Mycenaeans had the concept of a sacred tree. Let's take a look at the next one. Look at this one. Now, there's no sacred tree here, but look, here we have you have the goddess looking over worshipers from her throne. It's a beautiful images, and many of them are here are holding various gifts, possibly to be dedicated to her. Let's get a close up so you can see it even better. I love the bright colors. Isn't it amazing how bright it is? Next image. So you hear another image. We saw this one earlier. You see here, but once again, you have this goddess. You have those who are giving gifts before her. Once again, you got this floating fairy-like being connected to that tree there. Is it connected to the life force of the tree? What is that? Again, there's many opinions. I like the outfits, right? But she has been given gifts. It looks like that she's being given some poppies for opium, right? You see also the double axe, which is representing her, and you have the earth and the moon. Also, I want you to note there is another flying spirit that is up there on the upper right. So once again, we do have this idea that it's not just a polytheism. There's a sense of animism in the air. Do you feel it? That there's elementals are still coming through. A little bit of fun. Animistic belief systems still continue to this day. And Shintoism has many of those animistic ideas that do continue even into the modern world. It's as if animism eventually became an organized religion. Well, sort of organized. So, but that's for another talk. So let's go to the next image. Yeah, this is that same image, and this is how it actually looks like. Yeah, it's a gold seal ring, I should say, but you see, it's hard to see the elements. That's why I do the drawn in ones, because you can see everything is there. It's pretty accurate, but it's just too bright, and you do miss some of the details. And so that's why I do it. Let's go to the next image. Well, this is interesting. Yeah, here is a goddess on the throne. There she is, Potnia, and you have these what they describe as genie, or a procession of genie or non-humans giving offerings of drink. So these are Minoan into Mycenaean creatures that are giving offerings that they are part of this mystical, magical world. And I do believe you see the sun above there too. Let's go. So this is fascinating. Let's go to the next couple images there. And you can see you do have this where, in this case, you have a male, obviously a male, appearing to the goddess. And you see the sun above. I don't know what's going on here, but there is an interaction here. Let's go to the next one. And here you have another. So you do have, once again, this could be a representation of the male deity, but clearly in both those images, and there's a whole bunch more. There's so many of these. It is the one on the right that is the one that is enthroned, that has the power, right? You see that, right? Well, let's go to the next image. One of the most prominent aspects of Minoan beliefs was their belief in the appearance of a goddess while they performed their dances. There's a gold ring. This is an image from it, discovered at Isopata, depicts four women with arms raised, dancing amidst blooming flowers. Above the dancing women, a small figure of a female wearing different attire floats up in the air. Do you see it? There you have that. Let's take a look at the next image. This is what it looks like in actuality, right? Let's go to the next one. There's a few others of these, right? Here's a series right here. So here's another one. There's, of course, here you have lots of floating in the air right here. And once again, you see a tree on the left. You see a male deity connected to the temple in the middle, and you see a goddess enthroned. Let's go to the next image. Okay. Um, so there was a plate that was discovered in the ruins of the first palace, Phaistos, showing dancing female figures on either side of another female figure. Now take a look at this closely, who is emerging directly out of the earth. She does appear very much kind of like a snake. She has no arms, there's no legs. These, it looks like maybe these are scales. She could represent some form, maybe of vegetation. She seems to be a chthonic female that is possibly a stylized flower, right? Many scholars believe, many, and I read this all the time, that this is an early representation of the maiden as opposed to the lady. This is a representation of Kore. This is a representation of Persephone. And this is connected to her chthonic and underworld aspect. And echoes of that idea is shown in the Persephone myth, where what happens? Yeah, she's off hanging out with the goddesses, right? And she picks, oh yeah, a flower, and whoom, she goes into the underworld. And you can see how these kinds of stories kind of come together, right? Okay, so there you have it. Let's go to the next image. Of course, you have the poppy goddess. One of the most popular of these images was discovered in Ghazi in 1959 with arms raised, maybe in ecstasy, maybe just given a blessing, right? This goddess image is about 79 inches in height. By the way, the poppies are actually movable. You can actually remove them if you want to. Um, and so they have been identified as poppies. Let's go to the next image. There it is. So they are removable. So the colors in vertical notches in the poppies directly correspond to and with the color of the juice from the poppy as well. Uh, in nature, these notches appear right at the end of the flowering period. So this means that they are ripe and they are ready to be cultivated. Now, what the ancients did is they waited for these notches to appear. They did. And then uh, they left them in the sun to dry for a period of time so that the opium juice actually starts to ooze out of them, start to ooze to the surface. And then what they would do is they ritualistically would collect this juice with a spoon or a ladle, right? And they collect that. And then what they do is they take all this liquid, they put it together, and they mix it with wheat. And so they create what is known as opium cakes. Yeah. So there you have that. So yeah, so which brings up a whole other point. You're seeing everything flying in the air and people dancing, and everything seems some scholars are saying, well, they're doing opium. And so these are representations of their visions. Or it is part of their religion itself. It is much like peyote, right? And much like gypsum weed in the California area. Much like soma, right? Homa, right? And the idea that you're taking something in order for them to have a shamanic, a mystical kind of vision. And so this seems to be part of Minoan religion. In fact, let's go to the next image. We saw this earlier. Yeah, remember this? So this is, of course, this is from a gold signet ring from Mycenae that mimics what basically Minoan design. And you see poppies are here, right? So there you have that. Now, next image. beyond worshiping images an anthropomorphic form. By the way, I like this. This is the Minoan image that looks like almost, can you see it? It looks almost like a world tree, does it not? Wow, Minoan Mycenaean, right? So the Minoans believed that the entire natural world was filled with a divine aspect, and like many of other contemporary civilizations, they did worship before trees. They worshiped before sacred stones and pillars and springs in connection with these spirits. The Minoans worshipped at sites considered sacred, upon mountain peaks, in caves, around certain trees, at springs, rivers, and about stones. So we see this, right? So I like this. I like to suppose that it could be a sacred tree. Well, I'm not sure. Let's go to the next image. You can see here they are. There they are again, worshiping. You can see on either side there seems to be an image there in the middle. We don't know exactly what it looks like, but it does look like some kind of pillar of some sort and a throne, but we don't know anything more. Next image. I mentioned the mountain peaks. We looked at this earlier, so you can see that there is, which is wonderful. I mean, look at this. You got looks like a dome, which would be amazing, and looks like columns in this building standing on top of a mountain. But you also have a boat before it. But look what's on the boat. Yes, on the right-hand side, it looks like another kind of image, and possibly those are horns, right? On the right-hand side, you have the goddess on the throne, and on the left-hand side, you got that tree, and you got the goddess hanging from that tree, right? This was a ring that they had. Pretty amazing. Next image. Of course, once again, you can see that this looks like some kind of shrine of some sort. And they're giving offerings connected to the vegetative world. Next image. We have these mountain peaks. This is a reconstruction of one that really does exist, the ruins, at a place that's known as Petsophis, right? Let's go to the next image. We also have, this is fast, take a look at the detail. This is an image of a mountain shrine. It's a mountain shrine. And this is on what's called a Rhyton, which is a ritual bull. And they found this at Zagros, and it shows one of these peak sanctuaries. Of course, because it is a bowl, it's all the way around. So the next image shows you the complete architecture of this particular very elaborate mountain peak shrine. Let's go to it. Next one here. There it is. So you saw what we saw earlier. That was that top piece. Wow. Wow. What do you think? That's pretty amazing, right? Right. So you can see there that the Minoans and into the Mycenaeans are pretty elaborate. You can see, of course, the horns. Is this connected to Poseidon? But you also have the sacred birds and goats and so forth. Okay, let's see me for a little bit. All right. So, what's going to happen here? So, all about the mountain peaks of Crete, other Aegean islands, and along the western coast of Asia Minor, archaeologists have discovered high altar shrines. By the way, I like to do a talk someday. I did a little bit on sacred mountains, but I like to go back to Turkey to do this. I like climbing the top of these mountains, and I find all of these altar sites. I have pictures of these. I go, there's another altar site that goes back to the Luvian period or during the time of the Minoans and then turn the Mycenaeans and others, even long before, occupied these areas. Yes, in some cases, these mountain peak areas are eroded away because, you got rain and wind and the elements, eroding away these different kinds of places. But in other cases, they're preserved. Oftentimes, if they're under a shelter of a bigger rock or something, the morphology is always interesting. In fact, I always look at the morphology of a mountain. If I see it looking kind of strange, I go to the top and see what's going on up there. And oftentimes, I do find these mountain shrines. It's a fascinating kind of study, but they're up there because that's how you communicate with the sky deities, to those, or the elementals, those who are above. The Minoans portray in great celebrations set upon these mountain peaks. Archaeologists have discovered that goats were the most common sacrificial animal upon the mountain peaks, discovering their bones at various altar sites located in these higher elevated areas. Um, they have also detected that great fires were ignited at night. And as we know from, of course, from various discoveries at the various sites, for the sacrificial rites, and what they did typically is that they threw in various earthen figures into the flames with the animal bones. For these very same peaks, sanctuaries, archaeologists have also discovered clay representations of various human limbs and other body parts, possibly associated with some kind of healing cult. But this cult connected to parts of the human body was not only evident upon mountain peaks, but we find also, for example, at the Temple of Arcanes, a pair of life-size clay feet were discovered, and we also find them in the cave areas too. Minoan art often shows worshippers dancing around sacred trees. Let's take a look at that briefly. Oh, there's some human limbs there too. Yes, that's good. But that's toward the end of the talk. Yeah, so oh well, that's fine. All right, look at that. You can see there you're having look, they're dancing away, and you can see on the right there's some kind of spirit. You see one also kind of floating there. But what's going on here is you got this female figure, and she's dancing. She's having a great time, and they are shaking that tree, right? And it looks like they may be, I don't know. I don't know what those dots are. They're shaking fruit off of it or what's going on. But there is literally, they're bending the tree as part of some kind of ritual we don't know. Go to the next image. We see here again too, right? We see the bending of the tree, right? The bending of the tree. You have, of course, the goddess figure in the middle, possibly, or maybe a priestess of some sort. The lady on the left, it looks like she's sleeping. I don't know. Maybe she's tired of being depicted in all these seals. Go to the next image. There you have it. And again, dancing. Here look at this. Here you have the male figure that I was talking about. So here we have this male figure, and he is very much connected to life, but also the dance, the happiness, the joy, the bliss, right? And you see some sort of possibly a goddess sitting to the right. It's a possibility. So next image. Now, once again, more trees, right? Once a bending low. I think you're getting the point. There's lots of these. Let's go to the next image. Oh, I didn't realize I put this one in here. This is another good one. Now, I don't know. It looks to me like maybe there being a little intoxication going on here. The shaking of the tree looks like that person is just on the right is just kind of barreled over, right? What do you think? Well, you see these floating things. You see the Minoan spiritual universe was inhabited by spirit beings that are really, as you can see, as you see for yourself, difficult to define. While they look human in some cases, sometimes their feet and their hands or something is different about them, you know? In fact, there's even a bowl-shaped head that I don't have represented here. And many people say that this maybe connects to the Minotaur stories later on. Let's go to the next image. But you can see all these interesting things floating about. I like this image, of course. Once you see the male god holding a branch, possibly as an offering. You see this building with 3 columns. Maybe this is a sanctuary. You see some kind of image inside of it. Flowering giant fennel branches, right? There's some kind of inscription that we cannot read. Or maybe we could. I mean, it says the name of the woman on the right, maybe. More buildings, columns, female figure, maybe other goddesses. We're not sure. Sleeping, crying. We don't know. Next image. So once again, now we're seeing these various creatures. Keep an eye on these. I think I showed this one earlier. Let's go to the next one. Yeah. And so birds are very popular. Bird spirits are venerated. We find them oftentimes connected to homes, by the way. Next image. Yeah, look at this. You just, wow. What are these? I mean, the imagination is at play, right? It looks like an egg that's floating too, right? Next image. Look at those things floating above too. Okay, you're getting my point, aren't you? It's a very different world, indeed, with kinds of life that you would never, in the spiritual world, that you wouldn't seem to conceive. There seems to be floating, maybe on the right, and maybe a goddess with arm up on the left. That's a possibility. Next image. Oh, like I said, these are pretty elaborate. We don't know. Is this looks like a snake of some sort? So we have a snake deity, and that's probably what it is, right? Next image. And of course, again, you have more of the ecstatic aspects. So go out there and shake a tree. Next image. All right. Now, I like this. And I like these next couple images, I believe, that we're going to see here. It's once again, we're seeing a male and a female, and there seems to be some kind of balance here between the two. You have the goddess or sitting down, you have the god standing up, um, but you have some sense of interaction, some sense of being like a divine couple, right? And so again, this is maybe towards the end. Actually, it is toward the end of the Mycenaean period. But I find it fascinating that eventually you're going to have, for a while, an equilibrium, and then things are going to change. Next image. Okay, so this brings us to the next place, and that is that well, now we have been talking about uh, uh, Eleutheia the whole time. So we just we just gave it a name. Eleutheia is the name that eventually emerges for this Minoan kind of deity that has different aspects. And this is be through the mindset or the perspective of the Greeks and as well as the Romans later on. But we take a look at this, and let's look at me for a little bit, and then I'm going to go into how this relates to this image. So, so basically, as follows: concerning the origins of of this particular goddess of Eleutheia, um, obviously, Eleutheia is an early Minoan goddess and is connected in many ways to these others or an aspect of it. And we'll go into that in a few seconds. There are also earlier Neolithic prototypes for this particular deity that seem to be very firm. She is at first, she is a mother goddess, an earth goddess that's connected to Crete. She is the Minoan name that goes into Mycenaean for this particular deity that has a lot of power and influence, right? She is connected to her aspects will go on. And I don't want to give away surprises. The surprise will happen in a few moments. Eventually, however, she will become understood as a goddess of childbirth and the divine helper of women in labor, which seems to be connected to midwifery, right? But that's a gradual evolution. This particular deity, Eleutheia or Eleutheia, is understood as a Minoan goddess of the caves. So she is, remember we talked about the tripartite forms? You have the sky aspect, you got the earth aspect, and you got the underworld aspect. Well, she at first is connected more to the underworld aspect. And later on, she'll be holding the torch, much like Hecate, right? Hecate. So, but what will happen is that she's that aspect, but she's still connected to all those others. She still is a goddess that is of nature, that's inclusive of others that will may surprise you. Okay. So what happens is that while the name is pre-Indo-European, it does enter into the Greek language and is connected to the Greek verb eletho. Eletho, which means to bring. Some have theorized that aletheia means the bringer. The Greek lyric poet Pindar from the 6th century uses the word elethu with having the sense of more than bringing something indefinite, but in bringing freedom. In bringing freedom. The word Eleutheia in ancient Cretan has many of the same connections. That Eleutheia then could be understood as a goddess who brings freedom, may be significant, since in some sense, the Demeter of Eleusis was also believed to bestow freedom, but in this case, of the afterlife. Freedom. What kind of freedom? Well, of course, there is this idea of freedom from the womb, right? You're giving life, right? And there's this freedom that you are released from the womb. But there's this other thought that as when you die, you are released. There's freedom. In this case, not the womb, but the tomb. And so you have that aspect and that concept that there is still freedom and that there's something that is beyond that. Okay? Something that's beyond that. So her initiations, which of course brought freedom from the misery of death in the case of Demeter, and maybe some suffering in Tartarus, right? The Greek Homeric hymn to Demeter makes it very clear that the cult of Demeter at Eleusis, the cult of Demeter at Eleusis, originally came from the island of Crete. And once again, there is a connection to the Minoan goddess Eleutheia, who is worshipped on Crete, and we're going there right now. So here we go. Next image. The same one, same one we saw before. So what happens here? You're going to have this is going to be a big moment for you, a big connection. It turns out Eleutheia, the root, has the same root as Eleusis, as the Eleusinian rites. That Eleusis is also pre-Greek, meaning it dates even earlier than the Mycenaeans, going back to the time of the Minoans, right? Wait, Eleusis, that's where, that's where the mysteries, the Eleusinian mysteries take place, and that's where Demeter goes to to initiate Demeter. Remember, of course, obviously, means earth. Mater means, of course, mother. So the mater means earth mother. And remember, who is she paired with? Well, of course, paired with the spouse of the earth, Poseidon. Demeter and Poseidon. Is this helpful? Maybe too helpful. So what happens is Demeter also has a connection with Eleutheia. There's a connection because she goes to Eleusis, which of course is the same root as the name of this Minoan deity. Also, just to go a little bit further, Eleutheia is the same root for Eleusis, as in the Eleusinian mysteries, as the place of Eleusis. It also has the same root as Elysium. You know, the place where the righteous deceased goes to the underworld to live their lives in bliss and tranquility. So, so everything in the name. So how in the world did this goddess get there? Well, it turns out there's evidence from a lot of Greek writings, which I do have here, that Eleutheia, that cult and that belief system spread all over mainland Greece during the Archaic into the classical periods. Let's go to the next image. This is an image, of course, using the torches here. There we go. And so there you have it. Now there is, of course, the story that is told at Eleusis, and it follows that when Demeter had enough of her wanderings looking for her lost daughter, Persephone, who was kidnapped by Hades, she took the form of an old Cretan woman, according to the story, sat beside a well where Eleusis would someday be located. And she began to cry. Her tears brought 4 daughters of the chieftain Celsus out of the house, and they proceeded to comfort her. Demeter spins a pathetic yarn to gain their sympathy, telling about how she was abducted by pirates and barely escaped. She says, "Dear children, whosoever you are of mortal womankind, salutations. I will tell you my story, for it is not unseemly, since you ask for me to tell you the truth." And then she says, "Doso is my name, for it was given me by my stately mother. And now I come to Crete over the sea's wide back, not willingly, but force of strength against my liking. Pirate men brought me thence. They afterwards put me in with their swift craft to Thoricus, and there the women landed on the shore in full throng, and the men likewise started to prepare dinner next to the prow of the beach ship." She continues, "But my heart craved not pleasant food, and I fled secretly across the dark countryside, escaping my arrogant masters, that they should not take me unpurchased across the sea, where to win a price for me." And you're thinking to yourself, but wait a minute, that's not true. She's Demeter. So what you have here is inserted the foundation story, an earlier one, connected to the founding of Eleusis, and of course later on the Eleusinian mysteries, and they stuck it in here and they put it in Demeter's mouth. But it's important to understand this. So look at me for a few moments. Of course, this is not simply an arbitrary story. While Demeter, as the old Cretan woman, Crete, is spinning a tale, there's much truth in this historically. First of all, Demeter clarifies that she is from Crete, of which we, of course, already have confirmed, right, through discussing this evidence regarding the Minoans. Second, she tells how pirates brought her to Attica, which again makes historical sense for the Mycenaeans who took over the Minoan civilization. Well, bringing their practices with them, were regarded by many as pirates, right? The third clue is her name, calling herself Doso, which means, oh, wait for it, wait for it. What does Doso mean? I will give. Wait, hey, that's close to Eleutho, part of Eleutheia, which means to bring. which is a direct connection to the Minoan goddess Eleutheia, which means the bringer. And it connects to Lucis. Well, no, you got it, the Rosetta Stone. Yes. So Eleutheia is Demeter, the mother, the earth mother, tied together. And you thought you wouldn't be surprised, right? You see, it's like hidden in plain sight. You can't get better than that. How are we doing? You didn't expect that one. Now you're seeing the tie-ins. I promised you at the beginning of this talk, I did, that you would start to see these connections, and now you're seeing it. You know, it's getting pretty firm, right? Okay, so there you have it. Um, let's go to the next image. Scholars are certain that a cave located at Amensos, the harbor town for Knossos on Crete, was indeed dedicated to um, Eleutheia by the Minoans. In fact, people were worshiping in this cave since the Neolithic era, but many of the votive offerings were Minoan. There's one, you're looking at it, one Mycenaean linear B tablet discovered at Knossos specifically mentions that a goddess by the name of Eleutheia was worshipped specifically at Amnessos, where this cave was located. So how do we know? Well, we have an inscription from the Mycenaean period of time with her name tied to it. Can't get better. For example, linear B tablet from Knossos, known as KNG 705, states as follows. It says Amnissos, the name of the place. One jar of honey to Eleutheia, one jar of honey to all of the gods. I like the fact that she gets her own jar of honey, right? Uh, Now, the funny thing is that this particular tablet that mentions her is actually the tablet that enabled us to figure out Linear B, the Mycenaean language in the first place. This gave us enough evidence to figure it out. So it's not only is she the birth bringer, the bringer of life, but she's also the one who brought us an understanding of the Mycenaean language. Perhaps she is helping us, right? um, Now, she is also mentioned as receiving offerings of wool. That was interesting. Honey, wool, both of these offerings, honey and wool, in ancient times and during this time, were the provenance of women. Women typically were the ones who tended bees, connected to various sacred goddesses, and they typically were the ones who spun wool. Um, and so these are offerings in particular that are special for women who are giving it to this particular goddess, right? So also, of course, the Odyssey, you're right, refers to a cult located at the cave near Omnissos, and also mentions that this was the birthplace of Eleutheia. He, Odysseus, anchored at Amnissos by the cave of Eleutheia. While Pausanias in the 2nd century reveals the Cretans still believe this tradition as well as others. He says the Cretans suppose that Eleutheia was born at Amnissos in the Cnosan territory, unquote. So there you have it. How we doing so far? Now, in the late let's take a look at me for a few seconds. In the late post-Minoan period, the Eleuthian sanctuary at Amnissos was famous enough, again, for many people to go by. It's interesting that Amnissos also found its way in the itinerary of Amon Hoptus III, So he visited in 1380 BCE. We found this on a statue base. So this is kind of like the place to come to, right? So it is. It's not just a port in the middle of nowhere. It's a very important site, and this goddess was a key connection to it. Okay, so all right, let's go back. Let's take a look at her sacred cave. Here we go. So the sacred cave at Abyssos. Let's take a look at this right here. Yeah, there's Crete. When you see right there, there's Abyssos. See, it's at the top. See Knossos there? See Abyssos right there above that which is square right in the middle. That's where it is. Of course, Knossos is about 5 kilometers away from Knossos. Now, next image, the cave mouth. Oh, this is some pictures of, by the way, of Abyssos. You can see it's beautiful, right? Some ruins. Next image. Of course, we found various beautiful Minoan decor, frescoes. I love this one, this natural one. Here's another good one, the next one too. Beautiful, right? Seems that maybe these seem to be steps or some kind of platform of some kind. We don't know. Next image. The cave mouth is hidden behind a fig tree. It's kind of a hillside gully, which is near the sea. Located in the southern edge of modern Abyssos. The cave has a low ceiling. Let's go to the next image. There it is. Has a low ceiling, and its floor extends more or less horizontally into rock. It's a very uncomplicated floor plan, kind of open. Has clusters of stalagmites. Go to the next image. Many will say that these stalactites are sacred. The next image here. 2 stalagmites, one larger than the other, were positioned at the center of the shrine, complete with an altar and an encircling wall. Here, the Minoans and later the Mycenaeans participated in a rite that may have involved touching the stalagmite that was considered magical. Many votive offerings were found there. Next image. And you can kind of see the outline of an altar area. And so there's also outside the cave mouth, they discovered a rectangular building that may have housed the sanctuary custodian. We also found, next image, various votive images. So here's a few that we found inside. This is kind of a nice one. You have found this. They were found in situ. So this little couple hugging each other were there together. Let's go to the next image. Here's a pot that has various decorations. Let's go to the next one. Yeah, we found a whole bunch of these as well. Okay. So let's see me for a little bit. So what happens is that all around this area, there's lots of sacred sites. There is a wall eastward that extends out, and there's altars that kind of lead to a second cave. You see that there's pouring of libations here. There's an isolated altar cube that is preserved to the northeast. So you do have these various worship sites. The worship of Eleutheia passed from the Minoans to the Indo-European Mycenaeans, where she becomes an important goddess for them too, found in linear tablets as Eurytuia. Also, according to Mycenaean linear bead tablets, the goddess Eleutheia had sacred shrines dedicated to her at the cities of Lauto and Eleutheria, and at the sacred cave of Inatos. I think I have a few pictures of Inatos, I believe. So let's take a look at that. Next image. Yeah, we do. Oh, here's Inatos. And let's go to the next image. Okay, so here they found an Inatos. They found many archaic and Greek statuettes and votive offerings, including images showing Artemis about to shoot with her bow. And so we find connections to Artemis here. Let's go to the next image. And there we have it. Now, next image. Oh boy, here we go. So what happens here is you have this very empowered Eleutheia, this goddess, right? And now we're entering into the Dark Age. Now this goddess finds herself mentioned in the Iliad, where she is described as the goddess of the pains of birth. And so we learn she is directly connected to the beginning of life here. Yet this beginning is accompanied by suffering. It says, the sharp sorrow of pain descends on a woman in labor, the bitterness that the hard Eleutheia brings on Hera's daughter, who holds the power of the bitter birth pangs. So already we're seeing during the Greek Dark Age, which is between 1100 to 800 BCE, we're seeing that she is suffering. She's starting to be demoted. However, that is within the Greek tradition. In other places, images connected to her legacy continue on. And so in the post-Mycenaean period, we have examples of a divinity of childbirth that connects to this, to Eleutheia, in Boeotia. We find it in many Boeotian tombs. And this is a bell-shaped female terracotta figures. The one that you're looking at, we see here, she's holding her hands. You can see there on her abdomen. This is important. You also see what's a swastika, or a hook cross, which is painted on her dress. It probably does not have much of a significance at this time, although some had interpreted it as a symbols for man or even a vulva. But those meanings were earlier on. We're kind of losing these meanings here, but we see many of these in this shape. The characteristic here is that typically they have long necks, ornamented with necklaces consisting of 9 rings. It is noteworthy that these images, as well as those from the Mycenaean period, are draped, where those of the prehistoric period are entirely nude. Let's go to the next image. Furthermore, it is noteworthy that these images were often put into graves. So they're connected to birth, they're connected to new life, they're connected to the same ideas as Eleutheia, but they're connected to the tomb. And once again, we have to coordinate that she is a bringer. She's the bringer of us into this world, but she's also the bringer of us exiting this world into the next one. She is the one that carries us from one place to the other. And so it would be natural then to have this life bringer imagery, not only at the beginning of life, but at the beginning of life, because this idea of renewal. And so we know that these divinities were important after death. They became a tutelary goddess of the living, but they also became the guardian spirits of the dead. Let's go to the next image. Sometimes the goddess is represented as standing, but she's also represented as enthroned as well. So you have, once again, you can see the fertility connection. Let's go to the next image. But things are changing. We have, of course, you have Eleutheia. She's connected to generation. She's connected to fertility. She is a strong deity. But then things start to change. What happens is that this deity who's connected to the Minoans, that is an aspect of Demeter and all these other mother goddesses. All of a sudden, she starts to get demoted. I always feel bad when I get to this part. I've done a few other goddess talks, and it's like, oh, it's all wonderful, like Rhea, to talk on her. And then all of a sudden we just watch it kind of go downhill. This is what's happening a little bit, where she is losing her wider meanings, not in popular culture at first, usually within the literature, within those who are holding to the 12 pantheon of goddesses being the most important. And so what will happen is, next image, she becomes subordinated by who? Next image, to Hera, who then becomes known as her mother. So Hesiod, around 700 BCE, also he actually connects Eleutheia as one of the daughters of Hera, as does Pindar in the 6th century, saying, "Goddess of childbirth, Eleutheia, maid to the throne of the deep-thinking Moirai, child of all-powerful Hera, hear my song." Oh no, that's right. Hera, in her capacity of childbearing as a maternal deity, is understood as the guardian spirit of women, especially in wedlock. Just as every man in the Roman world later on had his genius, so every woman had her Juno. So at a very earlier period, however, in Greek mythology, Hera became worshipped as a goddess of delivery, and to whom people cried out in their prayers. For that very reason, uh, Aletheia actually becomes Eleutheia. What do you mean? And so you even have, in some instances, uh, her becoming not she loses her distinction as one, and she becomes, in some cases, many, to goddesses who had no other function than that of assisting women in giving birth, and called the daughters of Hera. How far have we fallen? Eleutheia obviously is still important in many places, especially Asia Minor. So a lot of this transformation, although Pindar, but a lot of this transformation where she's demoted as a result, and connected to Hera, who's assuming these aspects, although Hera herself is connected to, obviously, the mother goddesses and so forth. They're all connected. What's going to happen is Hera has more influence in mainland Greece, but there's still a lot of freedom for Aletheia to be her own in the area of Asia Minor or Anatolia. Now, she used to be worshipped all over the place. Eventually, there will become a few major places of worship. Let's go to the next image. One place is Delos, and the other place, next picture, is Thespai. I have a few. This place. It's used to have a lot more ruins. Let's go to the next image. It used to be, you'd have ruins. I like this next picture. I just couldn't resist. A remnant of the ruin. Next image. That used to be there. It's gone. But this also is the place where the muses are from. So this is a very center place of ancient Greek animism. Has many layers that go back into the past, and she was revered here and continually was revered here into the classical and even to the Roman period of time. Unfortunately, there's not much left. Um, let's take down the image. I'll talk a little bit here. In Olympia, Aletheia was closely connected with a youth by the name of Sosipolus. Sosipolus. Now, um, the long story is, she is still here a primary goddess of childbirth, but she's also declared as a chorotrophos. She is a childbearer. The votive offerings dedicated to her prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she was worshipped not only as a goddess of delivery at Olympos and these other two places, but also as a divinity, a protective divinity of children. We can trace the process of development of a maternal childbearing divinity into a goddess of childbirth, not only in the case of Hera, as we talked about, but as Eleutheia. And there are many legends that connect to this, right? And so, for example, well, we'll keep on going. I wanted to mention another one, but we're kind of running out of time. Of course, the assumption was that Hera was her mother now. And so Zeus must then be, well, if Hera is her mother, then Zeus must be her father. Hesiod seemed to believe this in the Theogony around 700 BCE when he created his various genealogies. He says, lastly, he, Zeus, made Hera his blooming wife, and she was joined in love with the king of gods and men, and brought forth Hebe, Ares, and Eleutheia. So there it is. But with that said, Pausanias, who's from the 2nd century CE, records that there was another earlier legend concerning Eleutheia, stating that the Lycian Olin, an earlier poet, was composed for the Delians, those of Delos, amongst other hymns, one to Eleutheia, and styles her the clever spinner, clearly identifying her with fate, and makes her older than Kronos. Now, unfortunately, this poem that's being described by Pausanias is lost. We do have some remnants, but what I find is interesting is this Olon, by the way, came from Lycia, which is Lycia or Lycia is very deeply connected, if you look at various mythologies, to the area of the Aegean. In fact, they talk about Minos, from Crete, settling there. There's a very strong connection. So we do have some kind of legacy here. And we take a look at this, and wait, here you still have retained the idea of Eleutheia as not only a goddess of birth, of life, a bringer, but also connected with fate, that she is the spinner. I actually have an image of somebody spinning. Maybe we'll take a look at that real briefly. So she's a spinner. She's a fate. And I want to build on this just for a few moments. So look at the next image. So that's how they spun, right? So what this means is that she is the one who, we see the big idea here, a leftover, a remnant that goes way back into earlier understandings of her. She is the bringer. She's the one who brings us into life. She is the one that takes us out in death to the next place, to the next realm. But she is also in control of where we go during this life. She spins our destiny. She decides our fate. So she is connected in this context to the fates. Wow, right? So powerful, powerful ideas. Okay, let's see me again. Thank you. The cult of Eleutheia that became the cult of Demeter and Eleusis. Now you made the connection. That Eleusian rites starts with this particular goddess, which is a big deal, by the way. Spread to other places on mainland Greece too, and even retained her name. For example, when Pausanias visited Olympia in the 2nd century CE, he came upon a shrine dedicated to both, as I said, the serpent savior of the city, Sosipolis, and Eleutheia, complete with an inner cella. This is quite a large temple. The priestess who tended the shrine was a virgin who fed a serpent honeyed barley cakes and water. Both of these offerings typically reserved for Demeter, but I want you to, do you guys see this, right? Honeyed barley, honey. They've been offering Eleutheia honey since that reference all the way back to Linear B, all the way back to around 1400 BCE, and she's still receiving the honey, right? Um, but also notice that it's the same offerings for Demeter. So these ideas, these identities start to split apart. The story behind this shrine follows, according to Pausanias, is that when an army from Arcadia, you want to hear this because you're about to have another epiphany. An army from Arcadia threatened to destroy Elis, the city that was in charge of hosting the Olympic Games throughout the centuries. It says as follows, I'm quoting, an old woman, oh, the old woman, hey, you know, the one that came from Crete to Eleusis, the old woman appeared before the two armies, holding a baby in her arms, and proceeded to lay the baby on the ground between them. We're not done. Suddenly, the baby changed into a serpent. This change making the Arcadians flee, for this was a bad omen to them. Turned into a snake. Oh, no. And there you have that snake concept, that snake goddess aspect, the earth the chthonic notion woven together that we put together earlier. Is I told you, you have to kind of go through all of this information, and then suddenly these stories start to make sense, and you're starting to see the connections. Isn't that fun, right? So you do have quite a reward if you take the time. Okay. Now, what will happen, next image, in some Greek myths regarding Eleutheia, she becomes the divine nurse of Leto, the goddess who gave birth to Artemis and Apollo. In the third Homeric hymn to Apollo, from Delos, tells the story of how Hera attempted to delay Eleutheia from arriving to take care of Leto so that she would keep waiting for her and so suffer more and more with labor pains. Well, Hera managed to delay Eleutheia for a while, trapped up in the Hypoean lands of the north. Other goddesses stepped in and sent Iris, the messenger, and of course, Rainbow Goddess, to get Eleutheia. And once Eleutheia arrived, Leto immediately gave birth. There are many votive chorotropos images, child-bearing images of a woman with twins on her lap, and they're often thought to be Eleutheia, offered by women hoping to have an easier and less painful labor pains through her divine intervention. In fact, the story is a little bit more, a little further, because it's interesting. So the story goes, according to Homeric hymn, number 3, the goddess Leto, pregnant with Apollo, and of course Artemis. Leto was racked 9 days and 9 nights with pain beyond want. And there were with her all the chiefest of the goddesses, Dione and Rhea, and Aegea, and Themis, and loud moaning Amphitrite, loud moaning, huh? And other deathless gods, save white-armed Hera, who sat in the halls of cloud-gathered Zeus. Only Eleutheia, goddess of sword travail, had not heard of Leto's troubles, for she sat on the top of Olympus beneath golden clouds by white-armed Hera's contriving, who kept her close enough through envy, because Leto, with the lovely tresses, was soon to bear a son, faultless and strong. But the goddesses sent out Iris from the well-set isle to bring Eleutheia, promising her a great necklace strung with golden threads, 9 cubits long. Okay, I mean, I tell you, what a deal. You get this huge golden necklace. And they bade Iris call her aside from white-armed Hera, lest she might afterwards turn her from coming with her words. When swift Iris, fleet of foot as the wind, had heard all this, she set to run, and quickly finishing all the distance, she came to the home of the gods, Sir Olympos, and forthwith called Eleutheia out of the hall to the door, and spoke winged words to her, telling her all as the goddesses who dwelled on Olympus had bidden her. So she moved of heart, Eleutheia, her dearest breast, and they went their way like wild doves in their going. As soon as Eleutheia, the goddess of sore travail, Magostakolos, right, set foot on Delos, as soon as she set foot on Delos, the pains of birth seized Leto, and she longed to bring forth. So she cast her arms about a palm tree and kneeled on the soft meadow while the earth of Delos laughed for joy beneath. Then the child leaped forth to the light. And so you have Apollo, of course, and the stories have Artemis too. So you have she has this power, but she's dominated by Hera, and she seems more surface. She had to be dragged down there with a necklace. So you see clear signs of patriarchy, of reworking, and making her petty or having to be bribed to do the right thing, which is, of course, this is the Greek understanding, which is rather sad, right? Doesn't mean that everybody's believing that. As it turns out, there seemed to be an official idea concerning her, not official, but the one that's in literature. And then you had, of course, the ones that are not so much, and those are the local variants. Let's go to the next image. Eleutheia is also connected to the story of the birth of Heracles or Hercules. As early as the Iliad, Zeus spoke forth and made a vow before all immortals. Hear me, all you gods, and all you goddesses, hear me while I speak forth what the heart within my breast urges. This day, Eleutheia of women's child pains shall bring forth a man to the light who, among the men sprung of the generation of my blood, shall be lord over all those dwelling about him. Of course, who's going to be upset by this? Hera. But Hera, in a flash of speed, left the horn of Olympus, and she brought him, suitor, into the light, and made him premature, and stayed the childbirth of Alcmene. And so you have that part of the story. The pseudo Apollodorus says that for when Hercules was about to be born, Zeus told the gods that the coming descendant of Perseus would be the king of Mycenae. So Hera, in jealous spite, persuaded Eleutheia to hold back Alcmene's labor, and then arranged to have Sthenethos' son, Aretheus, born in 7 months. So she wanted that instead to be in charge of that particular city. There's another version that there was a playmate and companion of Alcmene. And the story goes, is as the birth throes for Hercules were pressing on Alcmene, the Morai, these are the fates, and Eleutheia, as a favor to Hera, kept Alcmene in continuous birth pains. They remained seated. Now, this is important. I want you to know this. So they remained seated. Eleutheia, as well as the Morai. They remained seated, each keeping their arms crossed. You'll see in a little moment that by remaining seated and have their arms crossed, this is a form of sympathetic magic. By doing this, very unsympathetic to be honest, by doing this, it shuts down the ability for her to give birth. Close the legs, fold the arms, and that gives the power of holding the baby back. Now, Eleutheus, who was the playmate companion, remember, fearing that the pains of her labor would drive Alcmene mad, ran to the Morai and Eleutheia and announced that by desire of Zeus, a boy had been born to Alcmene, and that their prerogatives have been abolished. Of course, she's lying. At all this, consternation, of course, overcame the Morai, and they immediately let go their arms. Alcmene's pains ceased at once, and Hercules was born. The Morai, the Fates, were aggravated at this and took away the womanly parts of Galatheus, since being but immoral, she had deceived the gods. They turned her into a deceitful weasel, making her live in crannies, and gave her a grotesque way of mating. She is mounted through the ears and gives birth by bringing forth her young through her throat. However, Hecate felt sorry for this transformation of her appearance and appointed her as a sacred servant of herself. Thank you, Hecate, for doing that. What do you think of this story? So, what I want you to understand is the Morai, the Fates, and Eleutheia, they're put in two different sentences, and then later on, they put her under the Morai. They put her under the Fates. They place her as one of the spinners. And so there is here another residue of her as connected to fate. Wow, you didn't expect that one, did you? No, you didn't. Pretty interesting stuff. So there you have it. You also, of course, have other versions of that story, but we will keep going. There's quite a bit going on here. So we have other stories, quite a few, but I want to kind of skim through a few, and then we'll kind of close it up because I'm looking at our time here. According to Pindar, Eleutheia was directly connected to the Morai and was in fact their servant. And so you do have he says, goddess of childbirth, Eleutheia, maid to the throne of deep-thinking Morai, child of all-powerful Hera, hear my song, for without thee should we neither see the light of day, nor know the kindly dark, nor win the gift of Hebe, thy sister, the glorious limbs of youth. Did you notice that? You have the light of day and the dark. You still have, yes, you do have that aspect of spinning, of fate. But as I said before, see how I'm building slowly but surely? You can see that she's connected to the bookends of life too. She's the bringer. She brings us in. She takes us out. We also, of course, realize that she is connected to the meters. She is connected to life, l'chaim, right? But here we go. By the era of the archaic and classical Greeks, Eleutheia was depicted as a woman wielding a torch. I think it's the next image. Let's take a look. Representing the burning pains of childbirth, or with her arms raised in the air to bring the child to the light. When Eleutheia is depicted carrying torches, she is often shown as leading children out of a cave, and so in essence into the light. So now we have another explanation that you didn't expect, and that is the cave can represent the womb. And of course, as you leave the cave, you're leaving the womb, you're leaving the mother and going into the light. And so she is leading with her torch one into the light. Pausanias talks about the fact that the torch is an emblem of Eleutheia because of the travel pains that burn like fire. And so you have this idea. But Eleutheia also carries a torch because she has connections to a lunar goddess. The torch refers to the purifying power of fire. It was customary to burn incense in the house where a woman had to give birth to a child because she was considered unclean. And so the fire is a cleansing aspect. So she was a goddess of birth who came to the assistance of women in labor, and when she was kindly disposed, she furthered the birth. But when she was angry, of course, she protracted the labor and delayed that birth. Now, see me for a bit. Women called upon Eleutheia as well as men in connection to the process of giving birth. Aristophanes declares, O goddess divine, Eleutheia, patroness of women in labor, stay the birth till I have reached the spot less hallowed than Athena's mount, which is the Acropolis, right? Of course, Eleutheia is expected an offering some kind to ease childbirth. So you have this. So you have to give some kind of tribute, some kind of gift, some kind of offering. And so what do you give? What do you give? Well, you give of yourself, right? You give of yourself, a part of that. So, and sometimes a part of yourself connects um, to images of your breast, images of your female parts, literally yourself. So you have that. Let's take a look at the next image. We do have an image. I know it's very blurry, but we have very few images of Eleutheia that has come down to us. This is one. It is in the British Museum. It's a bronze statuette, belongs to the 6th century BCE, and it's not on display. Sorry. In fact, it's hardly seen at all. Well, you take a look at this, and the goddess stands pretty erect with this archaic stiffness, in the state of rest. The heels are close together, but notice the right foot is turned slightly outward. So there is movement going on here, right? The weight of her body is equally distributed on both feet. She wears sandals. By the way, what sandalos is a Minoan word, just for fun, right? She is clothed in Doric peplos with a fold falling to her waist. She's not wearing a girdle here, right? And of course, you see these zigzag lines with circles on her garment there. You have this remarkable polis, right? Her hair is parted in the middle. Her face kind of seems stern, but but she is here looking very much as a goddess, as a fertility deity, and you can see that this is from the 500s BCE. So clearly, popular culture, she's still very important, still quite revered. We have another image right here. Next image. This one, here it is. Um, and this is another image, and this is also of this particular, possibly this goddess. You can see that she is indeed. This is actually from the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. She is seen here as a chorotrophos, connected to life force, although other people say this is just a generic image, but there seems to be some kind of important writing that's behind it. So there you have that. Moving right along here. Okay. Another image here is a part of a throne that connects to her. Once again, can't see very much. I'm sorry. I wish we had better images of her. But we do have connections to her in her power in a magical way. And so let's take a look at this next one briefly. There we go. And so this is a magical aspect that's connected to giving life, childbirth. So there you have that. Next image. Oh, you also, of course, have in her sacred sites, you have these death masks. But let's put this down temporarily. So what happens here, because we got again, is that she is a deity of childbirth. There was a mass cult that was connected to her worship that we find in various graves. which I find is very interesting as well. I'm kind of summarizing here. Um, we do have various um, in the in the Eleutheia grotto in the island of Paros. We've come across release of female breasts and so forth. But what's going to happen, and this may come as no surprise either, is Eleutheia is connected to the underworld. She's connected to the cave. She is the torchbearer. She's the one who brings us in life. But conversely, she's the one who brings us out of life. She brings us into the light, but she also brings us into the darkness. She is connected with fate. And so what will happen is that in many contexts, her imagery will reflect and look exactly like that, or I should say in description, because we saw the ones that we blurry ones that just a few moments ago, but in description and in affiliation, we see her connected with Hecate. So let's go over the last few pictures and then we'll close up. These are the offerings of breasts that they have. So you give it all. And this is at her shrine. So this is the hope that she will give them milk, because not only is she connected to childbirth, she's connected to taking care of the child, rearing, and making sure that the breasts are full of milk. Next image. Here's another one too that we have found on Crete. Next image. In fact, she's connected to many things and lots of limbs here. Hopefully so you have this healing aspect connected to her as well. Next image. And again, a focus also on fertility. So, so you see in popular culture, going back to the Minoans and Mycenaeans, she sustains us in life itself. She very much is a caring mother, an aspect. Next image. You do have worship of her in Athens, near actually the temple of Serapis. In fact, here in Athens, what I find is fascinating about this story is that you have these competing viewpoints of who Eleutheia is. And so what happens is they say, well, is she from is she from Delos? Is she from Crete? Is she from the land of the Hyperboreans? I mean, where is she from? And so they can't seem to make up their mind. So what they do, you gotta love this, is that in the suburb, actually, sorry, in Athens, they actually have two statues, one dedicated to her in the Cretan aspect, and one dedicated to her as connected to the Hyperboreans. So, the best way to end an argument, is she this? Is she that? Why don't we just have both? And you can decide which statue to worship. Um, and so you also have the same thing happening in other places too, like at Agri. So you have these traditions that are coming together, and people are not sure how to work them out. And so this seems to be the cure. Next image. This is the area of Hyperboreans, the land to the north. Let's go to the next image. All right. So there's a dedication to Eleutheia by a mother. It's dated from the 3rd century BCE. And we take a look at this, and you're going, okay, a Bacchus, a Eucaline, and of course you see the dedication there. Why this particular piece is important is Eucaline is the same epithet that is used also as another name for Hecate. So she's assuming even that aspect. Let's go to the next image. So you're going to have many different perspectives. Sometimes some traditions will have her as not one goddess, but multiple goddesses that deal with uh, childbirth. And here they are with the birth of Athena. There's another image here. Next image. And you can see it here. And you can see, well, you got two Eleutheias, not one. Okay, so let's put it down. Thank you. So here you have it. You have a goddess that Eleutheia that we went through. We talked about all these different kinds of Minoan goddesses, but we also know that because the Minoans are not simply polytheistic, but they're also animistic, and they're seeing spirits in all kinds of things and places, and they're peeking through various corners here and there, in a tree, in a brook, in a mountain, in the sky. They are there. They're just throwing names and generalizing these powers so that they can work with it, so that they can worship them, so they can get help. But it's still kind of loosey-goosey. And so Minoan belief systems are also very ecstatic. Maybe it is the opium. Maybe it's just a way of life. Maybe it's just the natural setting. But they live this life, or they appear to live this religious life that's based upon a blissful existence that is working with nature. And because nature is viewed in so many different ways as female, because life comes from women, from their observation. They're not, sure, men have a part in it, but from their perspective, it is women or the female force that gives that life manifested. So what will happen for them, because they do worship all these life forces, they see myriads of aspects of this, and we define that as, oh, well, that's a goddess of huntress, goddess, and that is the great mountain goddess, and that one over there, that's the great earth goddess. But for the Minoans, it's just like, well, yeah, whether it's this force in nature, and we throw a name at it, and we worship it because it helps us, but there's still very little definition. One idea flows into the next. They are cyclical. They see everything in cycles, in circles. And then you get these Mycenaeans, they arrive, and they're very more linear, not completely, but more linear. And so now you got these two belief systems coming together. And as they come together, they have to collaborate. They mix, but they don't quite understand each other because one is Indo-European and one is pre-Indo-European. And so these two civilizations kind of cobble things together. And so who is a god? Who is a goddess? And so as a result of that, what happens is the sifting process comes about. Now, in the Asia Minor side, you have retained still this sensibility of this great goddess, this monumental mother goddess. Cybele, Artemis of the Ephesians, Artemis of Pergae, and other goddesses besides that. There's still a monolithic aspect. But it's still not quite the Minoan perception, because it's monolithic and it's seen as one, but not having as much as the animistic, permeating, loosey-goosey way that the that the Minoans are. You getting this, right? It's still, so it's like, well, this is this goddess and that goddess and so forth, and we see that all along the coast. Why? Because the people living along the coast, they're Luvians, and Luvians are Indo-European, and they go further in, it's the Hittites. So, but then as these traditions go towards the west, what happens there? Well, there, now it's like divide and conquer, baby. For them, they're like going, okay, so we got these 12 Olympians, we have other gods, and now they fragment these goddesses. Many of them do come from Anatolia and from the Minoan background to the Mycenaean. Others, though, are imported from their journeys to the north and also from areas like Thrace and so forth. And they cobble it together. And what they do is they make everything separate and individualized. And so it's kind of like, we got, and so we got Demeter there, right? We can confine it there. And then we have over here, we have Athena, we got Artemis, we got Aphrodite, and everything's more separate out. So you have two different things happening on two different sides. One side you have almost the Anatolian side, more of a universe, and Asia Minor, more of a universalist kind of aspect, but still more solid. On the other side, you have this solid, linear, this well-formed idea. And in the middle of this, you sifting through this process, you got this Eleutheia. Eleutheia rises to the top during the end of the Minoan into the Mycenaean period, and it retains her original name. And she just kind of floats there, kind of undefined. She's like this and this, she's connected to nature and she brings things in. She's connected to fate, birth, life. Then she's connected to the end, afterlife, what goes beyond that. That form of her was still very close to the transitional period between the Minoans and the Mycenaeans. And so you got Da Mater, Demeter, the earth mother, Mater. That aspect is still closely aligned with Eleutheia, and that course goes into and becomes the Eleusinian mysteries, the Eleusinian rites. And then, of course, but the Greeks like to separate things out. And so she kind of floats around, and eventually she loses various attributes, especially in the more classical literature. She loses attributes. She becomes more reduced. And eventually she just becomes like, mom is now Hera? and it becomes more petty, at least in the literature. At least in the literature, especially defined by mainland Greece. But amongst all that, there's still a competition going. There's still the older ideas, and they well up from time to time in areas, the rural areas, in areas where Greek ideas are not as strong and more indigenous ideas are still there. And so we get the situation where you're going to have in Athens and other places like, well, we got two here. What do we do with it? We got the Greek one and we got this other one. And so as these populations mix together, in some cases, they'll worship various images. And it just becomes a jumble. But we are also seeing the power, especially in the mainland Greece side, of how patriarchy can really demote a great Minoan deity. I'll just say that, even though we still have the loosey-goosey understanding of goddesses. Got it? And we also see how that will transform her into something that is a very small function. She goes from having all of these powers to that which is tied to her name, something very small. And that's rather sad. It's a sad commentary on how things go, on how things change. Kind of makes you want the good old days, right? Of the Minoans, where, people are focused less on definitions of titles, of names, and more about relationships and meaning, more about just enjoying life, just about it works. We're not overthinking it. It's beautiful. It's blissful. And we know it's beyond our own understanding. We know it's beyond our own comprehension, but we know that the spirit, this deity, these spirits, these deities interact with us. It's a mystery. It's magical. It's playful, but it also can be dark. It can be light. But what it does is it brings us in, it takes care of us, and it takes us out, and possibly to something else beyond. Thank you so much, and have a great night.